Power of Discipline. This video is based on key insights from the book Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter. Introduction. In his chapter, Daniel Walter addresses the common struggle of not meeting our New Year's resolutions. He argues that most people fail because of a lack of self-discipline, a key skill needed for success. According to Kurt Kottmeyer, an expert on success principles, even with all other principles in place, without self-discipline, none of them can work. Walter emphasizes that self-discipline is like a magical key. It opens the door to personal fulfillment and helps one achieve their dreams. Without it, talent or intelligence alone may not be enough for greatness. He aims to help readers develop this crucial skill, transform their lives through positive habits, and take charge of their destinies. The author stresses that change begins with daily actions. If you're dissatisfied with your life and keep repeating the same mistakes, this book offers a guide to break free from these patterns. It can serve as a manual for achieving remarkable goals, even if you're unsure how to start. Walter acknowledges that it can be tough when trying to abandon old, unproductive habits in favor of new, beneficial ones. However, he promises to provide strategies to help overcome these challenges. He also notes that disgust or frustration with one's current situation can serve as a powerful motivator for change. In essence, Walter believes everyone has the power within themselves to alter their lives for the better, and hopes his book will equip readers with the necessary tools, primarily self-discipline, to make this transformation. He encourages those ready to put in the work to expect significant improvements in their circumstances by applying the principles discussed in the book. Chapter 1: Self-Discipline, the Biological Argument. Daniel Walter begins by explaining that self-discipline isn't something you're simply born with. It's a skill anyone can improve. He challenges the idea that some people are naturally disciplined while others aren't, arguing there's a real science behind it. Understanding how your brain works can help you build more self-control. Walter points to research by neuroscientists Hare and Kammerer, who used brain scans to see what happens when people choose between getting a reward now or waiting for a bigger reward later. They found that areas of the brain called the ventral medial prefrontal cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex were very active during these decisions. More activity in these areas meant people were more likely to choose the long-term benefit, showing that self-discipline isn't just about willpower, it's about what's happening in your brain. This is important because it means you can actually strengthen those brain areas through practice. Think of it like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. If you struggle with things like resisting sweets or staying focused, Walter assures you it's not a permanent problem. Walter then discusses the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment, where children were offered one marshmallow immediately or two if they waited. Years later, researchers revisited those kids and found that those who could delay gratification had more activity in their prefrontal cortex and a different response in a part of the brain linked to addiction. These kids also tended to be more successful in life overall. This shows that even a simple choice like waiting for a marshmallow can have a big impact on future decisions. Walter emphasizes that this isn't about genetics, it's about building a skill. Just like lifting weights makes your body stronger, practicing self-control makes those brain areas stronger. He encourages readers not to be discouraged if they struggle, because self-discipline can be improved with effort. Walter connects self-discipline to focus, explaining that both rely on executive functions like working memory, being able to switch between tasks, and controlling impulses. These functions happen in several brain areas, including the anterior cingulate cortex, the orbitofrontal cortex, and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. He explains that self-discipline and focus go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. Discipline is about staying focused on a goal until you reach it. Imagine trying to build a tower of blocks. You need focus to carefully place each block, and discipline to keep building even when it gets tricky. The author introduces the idea of willpower fatigue, explaining that self-control is like a muscle that gets tired with use. If you've been resisting temptations all day, your willpower will be weaker later on. He references a study by Baumeister, where participants were asked to eat either radishes or cookies. Those who ate the radishes, requiring more self-control, then struggled to solve a puzzle, while those who ate the cookies did better. This shows that willpower is a limited resource. It's like running a marathon. You can't sprint the whole way. You need to pace yourself and take breaks. Walter then provides practical advice on willpower protection. He explains that the brain prioritizes survival, and when it senses a threat, like low energy, it craves instant gratification. To avoid this, he suggests removing temptations. If you're trying to eat healthier, don't keep junk food in the house. Shop strategically, avoiding tempting aisles. He also suggests shopping after a meal, so you're less likely to make impulse purchases. This isn't about being weak, it's about setting yourself up for success. He also points out that stress depletes willpower, as the brain goes into fight or flight mode and makes impulsive decisions. Finally, Walter stresses that discipline is about doing what you know is right, even when you don't feel like it. He emphasizes the importance of consistency, explaining that small, regular efforts build momentum and lead to lasting results. He reiterates that self-discipline is a biological process that can be strengthened with practice, and that the benefits are worth the effort. He sets the stage for the next chapter by promising to discuss those benefits in more detail. Chapter 2: The Benefits of Self-Discipline. Daniel Walter begins by explaining that self-discipline isn't just about achieving big dreams. It's a necessary skill for everyday life. He points out that many people drift through life without really thinking about their choices, and this lack of control can cause problems in all areas, from relationships to work. Walter believes a surprising reason for family issues is often a simple lack of self-discipline. For example, if someone struggles with cheating, it's often because they can't control their impulses. Similarly, financial problems often stem from not being able to control spending. Essentially, Walter argues that how well you control yourself directly impacts how successful you'll be. A key benefit of self-discipline, according to Walter, is a boost in self-confidence. He explains that when people don't follow through on their goals, they often feel bad about themselves. Think about New Year's resolutions. Many people make them with good intentions, but quickly fall back into old habits. This cycle of setting goals and failing can really hurt your self-esteem. Walter uses the example of someone wanting to lose weight, but continuing to eat unhealthy foods while wishing for a different outcome. He emphasizes that wishing won't get you anywhere. Action is required. A self-disciplined person, on the other hand, feels confident because they are actively working towards becoming their best self, making healthy choices, and moving closer to their goals. They feel in control of their life, knowing where they're headed. Walter also highlights how self-discipline strengthens relationships. He explains that trust is the foundation of any good friendship or partnership, and trust is built on keeping your word. If you consistently do what you say you're going to do, people will rely on you. A disciplined person is consistent. They act the same way in private as they do in public, valuing honesty and integrity. These qualities are rare and highly valued, making disciplined people more likely to build strong, lasting relationships. Interestingly, Walter connects self-discipline to emotional resilience. He explains that people who are easily offended often lack self-assurance. They haven't fully figured out who they are or what they believe in, so criticism feels like a personal attack. Self-disciplined people, however, are more confident and can handle criticism without taking it to heart. They even see constructive criticism as a chance to improve. Finally, Walter discusses the link between self-discipline and avoiding risky behaviors. He points to research showing that people with low self-control are more likely to engage in harmful activities like substance abuse or unsafe sexual practices. He references studies that found college students with higher self-control were less likely to abuse drugs or alcohol. He explains that while many factors contribute to risky behavior, self-control plays a significant role in resisting temptation and making responsible choices. Walter concludes by stating that self-discipline is about more than just achieving goals. It's about living a better, healthier, and more fulfilling life. He acknowledges that readers are seeking ways to improve their self-discipline and suggests that understanding why it's so difficult to change is the first step. Chapter 3, The Status Quo Bias, Why We Resist Change. Daniel Walter begins by acknowledging that improving self-discipline isn't easy, but assures readers that understanding the mental hurdles is key to success. He explains that even with clear goals and growing self-discipline, people often feel stuck by an unseen force. This isn't a sign of weakness, but a common experience rooted in a psychological concept called the status quo bias. Essentially, this bias makes us prefer things as they are, resisting change even when it might be beneficial. Walter introduces the sunk cost fallacy as a related idea. This explains why people stay in situations like unhappy relationships or dead-end jobs, simply because they've already invested time and effort into them. It's like thinking, I've already spent so long doing this, I can't quit now. But Walter emphasizes that clinging to the familiar isn't always logical. He points to research by economists Zeckhauser and Samuelson, who found that people often choose to do nothing, even when a better option exists. This tendency towards inaction is also known as inertia. The author explains that a big reason for this is loss aversion. People generally dislike losing things more than they enjoy gaining things of equal value. This means we're hesitant to give up what we have, even if what we're giving up isn't great, because the potential loss feels bigger than the potential gain. For example, someone might stay in a comfortable but unchallenging job, because the thought of losing that comfort is scarier than the possibility of finding a more fulfilling role. Even positive changes, like moving to a better house, can feel daunting because of the costs and uncertainties involved. Walter also highlights the fear of regret as a major contributor to the status quo bias. People worry about making the wrong choice and being judged by others. This fear often leads them to stick with what's familiar, even if it's not ideal. He reassures readers that failure isn't the end of the world, and that successful people have all experienced setbacks. Learning from mistakes is crucial for growth. Another powerful influence, according to Walter, is the mere exposure effect. This means we tend to develop a preference for things simply because we're familiar with them. The more we experience something, the more likely we are to like it. He uses the example of getting to know someone. The more time we spend with them, the more we tend to like them. However, he acknowledges that this isn't always true, as repeated exposure can also reveal negative qualities. But generally, familiarity breeds comfort, and we're inclined to stick with what we know. Walter explains that the mere exposure effect can be both helpful and harmful. When it comes to building self-discipline, the more we practice self-control, the easier it becomes. But it also makes it harder to break bad habits. For instance, if someone is used to sleeping in on Saturdays, it will be challenging to start waking up early to work on their goals. The key, Walter suggests, is to keep reminding yourself that the more you do something, the easier it will become. Walter encourages readers to reflect on times they've resisted change, perhaps by saying things like, "I've always done it this way," or "There's no real problem, so why bother changing?" He warns that the status quo bias will keep you safe, but it will also prevent you from achieving your dreams. He urges readers to fear regret more than failure, as the feeling of wondering, "What if?" can be far more painful than the experience of trying and not succeeding. To help readers overcome this bias, Walter provides a practical exercise. He suggests creating a 4-quadrant chart to evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of both staying with the status quo and making a change. This exercise encourages logical thinking and helps to remove emotions from the decision-making process. He recommends getting a second opinion from someone you trust to ensure you haven't overlooked anything. Walter concludes by encouraging readers to actively question their decisions and to consistently challenge their habits. He emphasizes the importance of making a conscious effort to step outside of their comfort zones. He sets the stage for the next chapter, where he will discuss the importance of being realistic about your abilities. Chapter 4, A Reality Check, The Dunning-Kruger Effect. Daniel Walter begins this chapter by talking about how important it is to know what you're good at, but even more important to understand what you're not so good at. He uses a relatable example, someone who thinks their jokes are hilarious, but nobody else laughs. It's a reminder that everyone has weaknesses, and ignoring them can cause problems. Walter then introduces the Dunning-Kruger effect, a tricky idea where people who aren't skilled at something often don't realize how unskilled they are. It's like a double whammy, because they keep making mistakes and don't even know they're making them. Because they don't recognize their problems, they don't try to fix them, and instead blame bad luck when things go wrong. He explains that psychologists Dunning and Kruger discovered this by testing people on things like humor and grammar. Those who did poorly were the least likely to realize it, because they lack the ability to think about their own thinking. Walter points out that we all tend to think we're better than we are, but this effect really highlights that tendency, and can even lead to unqualified people getting promoted to positions they aren't ready for. He describes these people as unaware of their shortcomings, believing they are smarter than everyone else, while truly skilled people are usually more humble. The author then connects this effect to self-discipline. He explains that self-discipline is a skill, and like any skill, it's easy to overestimate how good you are at it. If you think you've totally mastered productivity and resisting temptation, you might want to think again. Walter suggests that the more you learn about something, the more you realize how much you don't know. It's a humbling experience. So, how do you avoid falling into the Dunning-Kruger trap? Walter says it's all about balance. You need confidence in your abilities, but also a willingness to accept criticism. He uses the example of a good driver taking an advanced driving course. If the instructor points out flaws, a person affected by the Dunning-Kruger effect might get defensive, but someone with self-awareness would use the feedback to improve. Walter emphasizes that a reality check can be tough, but it's a chance to grow. He recommends continuous learning, whether through courses, apps, or simply seeking out feedback. These tools can provide objective information about your progress. Walter also suggests surrounding yourself with people who are more skilled than you are. This isn't about comparing yourself to others, but about creating an environment where you're constantly learning. Keeping track of your goals and where you are now can also help you stay grounded. He cautions readers against becoming judgmental when they start noticing the Dunning-Kruger effect in others, reminding them to practice empathy. Finally, Walter concludes by reminding us that nobody is perfect. Everyone has flaws, and that's okay. It means there's always room for improvement. He sets the stage for the next chapter, which will focus on the daily habits needed to build self-discipline. Chapter 5, Daily Habits to Improve Self-Discipline. Daniel Walter begins by explaining that habits are things we do automatically, like brushing our teeth. We don't even have to think about it. He wants readers to make the actions needed to reach their dreams feel just as natural. He uses the example of his father, who had a very set routine after work, greeting the family, changing clothes, eating, and then watching TV. This happened every single day without fail, showing how strong habits can be. Walter emphasizes that our habits really show who we are. If people always expect you to be late, that's because you've built a habit of being late. It's a cycle that starts with things like staying up too late and then rushing in the morning. He explains that psychologists believe habits happen because our brains connect a trigger with a reaction. For example, feeling stressed might trigger a desire to binge eat. Unless we decide to change these patterns, they'll stick with us. The author believes the difference between people who succeed and those who don't comes down to their daily habits. Successful people do the same things every day to improve themselves in every way mentally, physically, and even spiritually. He stresses the importance of a good morning routine. He asks readers if they hit the snooze button and then rush around, ending up making unhealthy choices. He points out that a bad start to the day can easily lead to more bad choices, like skipping the gym and choosing fast food. Walter shares examples of successful people and their morning routines. Barack Obama exercises for 45 minutes, Bill Gates watches educational videos while working out, and Oprah Winfrey walks her dogs, reads positive thoughts, and meditates. The common thread is that they all have a set routine that helps them start the day strong. He also highlights the importance of an evening routine, emphasizing that sleep is crucial for feeling refreshed and productive. Turning off screens and reading are good ways to relax before bed, and getting at least 7 hours of sleep is essential for both health and performance. The author then discusses the power of gratitude. A study showed that people with more self-control were also more grateful. He explains that saying, "Thank you for small things," and truly meaning it can make a big difference. He suggests writing down 5 things you're grateful for each day to focus on the positive. He also encourages readers to set daily goals to break down big dreams into smaller, manageable steps. If someone wants to lose weight, instead of focusing on losing 60 pounds, they can set a goal to lose a little over a pound each week. Walter also stresses the importance of staying organized. He explains that being organized reduces stress, saves time, and boosts energy. He then highlights 2 habits successful people often do before 8 a.m., praying or meditating, and reading. He explains that meditation can help with stress, focus, and creativity, and many famous people use it regularly. He also points out that successful people love to read and learn, seeing it as an investment in themselves. He suggests listening to audiobooks if finding time to read is difficult. Finally, Walter acknowledges that breaking bad habits can be tough, but promises to share tips for building better ones in the next chapter. He wants readers to understand that consistent effort, even in small steps, is the key to achieving their goals and improving their self-discipline. Chapter 6: Tips for Building Better Habits. Daniel Walter begins by highlighting the incredible discipline of Navy SEALs, explaining that their success isn't just about physical strength, but a powerful mind. He points out that becoming a SEAL is incredibly hard, and many give up, but those who finish understand how strong their minds truly are. This mental strength allows them to complete any task, no matter how difficult. Walter introduces the 40% rule, a key strategy used in SEAL training. This rule suggests that when your mind tells you you're tired, you've actually only used 40% of your potential. It's a choice to believe you have 60% more to give. To push past this point, you need to accept the discomfort, both mental and physical. Walter explains that most people stop when they feel the burn, missing out on their full potential. By embracing the 40% rule, you start to realize how much you're capable of. He uses the example of pull-ups. After 10, your mind might tell you to stop, but taking short breaks and continuing proves that voice wrong. You might end up doing twice as many as you initially thought possible. This builds confidence and mental toughness. Walter emphasizes that belief is crucial. If you believe you can do more, you will, and you'll break through your self-imposed limits. Self-discipline, he argues, is about endurance, continuing even when your mind wants you to quit. Your mind can be your greatest ally when you believe in yourself, but your worst enemy if you accept failure. Walter illustrates this with a thought experiment. Imagine running a marathon without training. Your body would quickly protest, and it might seem wise to stop. However, he contrasts this with a life-or-death situation, like running from danger. In that case, you'd push through the pain because the consequences of stopping are far greater. This shows that we often underestimate our capabilities. We settle for comfort, like buying bigger clothes or staying in jobs we dislike, instead of challenging ourselves to grow. Those who master discipline do so by choosing to strive for something extraordinary. Walter notes that we admire athletes because they've mastered their skills through dedication, and we could achieve similar results if we invested the same time and effort into our own goals. Walter then discusses the power of the placebo effect, referencing studies that show believing in a performance enhancer, even if it's a sugar pill, can actually improve performance. He explains that the brain creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, believing an outcome and then working to make it happen. This demonstrates the incredible influence of the mind over the body. He reiterates that simply believing you have more to give can make it possible. Moving on to managing stress, Walter highlights how Navy SEALs control their fight, flight, or freeze response through techniques like box breathing. This involves focusing on slow, controlled breaths, inhaling, holding, and exhaling for 4 seconds each, to calm the nervous system and regain control. Walter argues that instead of just managing stress, we should aim to stop it altogether, as the SEALs do. A calm mind is a productive mind, and box breathing can be used anywhere, anytime to regain composure. Walter introduces Grant Cardone's 10x rule, which suggests setting goals 10 times higher than what you initially desire. This isn't about actually achieving the inflated goal, but about forcing yourself to think bigger and take massive action. He uses weight loss as an example. Aiming to lose 100 pounds instead of 10 encourages a complete lifestyle change rather than a temporary diet. The 10x rule maximizes potential by pushing you to do more than you thought possible, strengthening your discipline. Walter points out that we often set low goals to avoid disappointment, but raising the bar is essential for achieving greater things. Finally, Walter discusses a Harvard University study comparing decision-making in humans and chimpanzees. The study found that chimpanzees were more likely to wait for a larger reward, while humans often overthink and choose immediate gratification. He explains that our complex brains can lead to rationalization and excuses, preventing us from making the best choices. To combat this, Walter suggests the 10-minute rule. If you're tempted to do something you shouldn't, like eat junk food, pause for 10 minutes and reassess. This eliminates the immediate aspect of gratification, improving decision-making and discipline. He uses the example of a treadmill workout. If you feel tired, commit to running for another 10 minutes, and you might find you're not as exhausted as you thought. Walter concludes by emphasizing that discipline isn't innate. It's developed over time, even for the highly trained Navy SEALs, and anyone can cultivate it. Chapter 7, What is Hindering Your Discipline? Daniel Walter begins this chapter by exploring why so many people struggle with discipline, even though they know it's important for success. He points out that it's easy to blame outside factors, but often the things holding us back are hidden within our own habits and thought patterns. These sneaky obstacles can make it really hard to stick to our goals. One common problem Walter identifies is procrastination, and a surprising reason behind it: the belief that we work best under pressure. He explains Parkinson's law, which basically says that work expands to fill the time available for it. Think about it like this. If you have a week to write a paper, you'll probably stretch it out and work on it a little bit each day. But if you only have one night, you'll likely power through and get it done quickly. Walter suggests fighting this by setting tighter deadlines for yourself. This forces you to focus and avoid overcomplicating things. It's like giving yourself a friendly challenge. Walter emphasizes that true discipline isn't about waiting for the perfect moment or feeling motivated. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you don't want to. He uses the example of going to the gym even when your muscles are sore. You could skip leg day, but you could also work on other parts of your body. Excuses and inaction are basically the same thing, both leading to not reaching your goals. He warns that constantly waiting for ideal conditions is a losing game, because life is always going to throw something unexpected your way. He also acknowledges that doubt is normal when you're trying something new or challenging. It's scary to step outside your comfort zone. But Walter encourages readers to start now, even if they don't feel fully prepared. He cautions against getting stuck in endless planning, because too much analysis can prevent you from actually taking action. It's better to start and adjust as you go, rather than trying to predict every possible outcome. Walter points out that society often contributes to procrastination by promoting unrealistic expectations of perfection. This fear of failure can be paralyzing, leading us to put things off. To overcome this, he introduces the 70% rule. This means taking action when you feel about 70% confident in your success. You don't need to be 100% sure, because that level of certainty rarely exists. It's about being brave enough to try, even with some risk of failure. He illustrates this with the example of training for a marathon. Start by running 2 miles, even if a full marathon seems impossible right now. Finally, Walter discusses false hope syndrome, which is the mistaken belief that changing bad habits is easy. This leads to setting overly ambitious goals and then getting discouraged when things don't happen quickly. He explains that real change takes time and effort, and that success rarely happens overnight. He uses the example of successful people, noting that we only see their achievements, not the struggles they faced along the way. Many people give up when they realize how much work is involved. Walter encourages readers to be aware of their own self-sabotaging behaviors and to understand that discipline isn't always pleasant, but it's essential for achieving what you want in life. He sets the stage for the next chapter, which will focus on learning to embrace discomfort as part of the process. Chapter 8: Get Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable. Daniel Walter begins this chapter by explaining that building self-discipline isn't easy or comfortable. It's not hard to do things you enjoy, like eating treats or watching TV. But when you want to achieve something big, you have to be willing to do things that are difficult. Most people naturally avoid discomfort, waking up just in time for work and doing what feels easiest. Walter emphasizes that there's no way to make self-discipline feel good, but you can build your ability to handle the discomfort it brings. Think of it like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. This means regularly pushing yourself to do things that feel challenging. Walter explains that willpower isn't a limited resource that runs out, but something you can actually strengthen. He suggests practicing being uncomfortable to get used to the feeling. Stepping outside your comfort zone helps you realize that your fears aren't as scary as you think. He uses the saying, false evidence appearing real, to explain how our fears are often based on imagined problems, not real ones. The only way to overcome these fears is to face them. Every time you do something that scares you, you become more confident and better at handling discomfort. To illustrate this point, Walter shares the story of Jia Jiang, who overcame his fear of rejection by intentionally seeking it out for 100 days. Jiang asked strangers for unusual requests, like borrowing money or asking to play soccer in their backyard. While these experiences were uncomfortable, they taught him that people are generally kind and that rejection isn't something to be feared. Walter encourages readers to do the opposite of what they're comfortable with. If you're usually assertive, try being more passive. If you avoid talking to strangers, make an effort to start conversations. If you're not good at something, like dancing, take a class. There are countless ways to challenge yourself. Walter stresses that getting comfortable with discomfort is one of the best ways to improve self-discipline. Everyone has things they're afraid of or uncomfortable with, but avoiding them only holds you back. If you want to become your best self, you need to face your fears and choose discomfort. As you practice this, you'll find that the initial pain becomes more manageable, and even hunger pangs can become a sign that you're sticking to your goals. Discipline isn't about feeling good. It's about doing what's necessary for long-term success. It builds mental toughness and helps you persevere even when things are tough. Walter introduces the concept of urge surfing as a way to manage temptations. He explains that urges are like waves. They build in intensity, peak, and then eventually subside. Psychologist Alan Marlett compared urges to waves, suggesting that you can surf over them instead of fighting them. This means acknowledging the urge without giving in to it. For example, instead of thinking, "I need to eat cake," you can say, "I have an urge to eat cake." This creates distance between you and the urge, allowing it to pass without controlling you. Fighting urges actually makes them stronger and longer lasting, while observing them without judgment increases your chances of overcoming them. Walter points out that urges don't have any real power unless you give them power by indulging them. He uses the example of a drug addict in rehab who experiences fewer cravings when they don't have access to drugs. He compares fighting an urge to trying to block a waterfall. It's a losing battle. Instead, you should step back and watch it flow. By approaching urges with curiosity instead of fear, you can make it easier to change your behavior. Walter encourages readers to study their own habits and pay attention to their urges. He cautions against trying to distract yourself from urges, as this can actually strengthen them. He uses the example of trying not to think about an elephant. The more you try to avoid the thought, the more it pops into your mind. The same is true for urges. Walter provides a step-by-step guide to urge surfing. Pay attention to where you feel the urge in your body, focus on the sensations, focus on your breath, imagine the urge as a wave, and observe how it changes. He emphasizes that urges are temporary and that you won't feel them forever. Finally, Walter concludes that having a good system is essential for achieving your goals. If you don't follow the right steps, your dreams may never come true. He promises to discuss how to focus on the right system in the next chapter. Chapter 9, Focus on the System. Daniel Walter begins by pointing out something many people experience. Setting goals is easy, but actually reaching them is hard. It's not that the goals themselves are bad, but often people focus too much on what they want to achieve and not enough on how they'll get there. He uses the example of a football coach. A coach who only thinks about winning might miss the small, daily things like practice habits that actually lead to victory. Walter argues that focusing on a solid system, a plan of action, is more important than just dreaming about the result. He stresses that goals are still important as they give you direction, but they shouldn't be the only thing you think about. If you spend all your time staring at the finish line without building a path to get there, you're likely to end up like the majority of people who don't keep their New Year's resolutions. Walter asks a compelling question. Why do some people succeed while others fail, even when they have the same goals? He uses the Olympics and job interviews as examples. The difference, he explains, isn't desire, but the system, the strategy the winners use. It's about having the right habits and routines. He then connects this to everyday life, showing how simply setting a goal isn't enough. If your bedroom is messy, just tidying it up once won't solve the problem. You need to change the habit of being untidy. Similarly, a quick diet might help you lose weight, but without changing your eating habits, the weight will come back. Walter uses the analogy of taking pain relievers for headaches. It treats the symptom, not the cause. You need to figure out why you're getting headaches, like not drinking enough water, and fix that. The author emphasizes that focusing solely on outcomes can actually limit your happiness. People often think, I'll be happy when I reach this goal. This puts happiness in the future, making it dependent on something you haven't achieved yet. Walter explains that life is unpredictable, and you might reach your destination in a way you didn't expect. That doesn't mean you failed. A systems-based approach allows you to enjoy the process and feel good about your progress, even if things don't go exactly as planned. He calls this the yo-yo effect. When you lose motivation after achieving a goal because all your energy was focused on the finish line, not the journey. The real key is continuous improvement, enjoying the process of getting better. Walter reassures readers that struggling with habits isn't a sign of weakness. The problem isn't you, it's the system you're using. He explains that changing habits is hard because we often focus on the wrong things or try to change them in the wrong way. He uses the analogy of an onion with layers of change. The first layer is the outcome, the goal itself. The second layer is the process, the habits and systems you put in place. But the deepest, most important layer is your identity, your beliefs about yourself. Walter illustrates this with the example of someone trying to quit smoking. Saying I'm trying to quit still identifies you as a smoker. Saying I don't smoke is a statement of who you are now. Walter stresses that lasting change comes from changing your beliefs. If you want to get in shape like an athlete, you need to start believing you are an athlete. Your actions are driven by your beliefs. If you believe you're bad at math, you'll likely avoid it and reinforce that belief. He shares the story of Brian Clark, who stopped biting his nails not just by willpower, but by changing his view of his nails from something he destroyed to something he took pride in. He explains that habits become part of your identity. When a good habit becomes part of who you are, it's no longer a struggle to maintain it. It's simply what you do. Walter cautions that negative self-beliefs can hold you back. If you constantly tell yourself, "I'm always late," or "I'm not a morning person," you're programming your mind to accept those things as true. He encourages readers to challenge those beliefs and create a new identity. Even when life gets busy, prioritizing good habits becomes easier when they're aligned with who you want to be. He draws a parallel to the discipline of Navy SEALs and Zen Buddhists, suggesting that their dedication comes from a deeply ingrained sense of identity. Chapter 10, Zen Philosophy and Goal Attainment. Daniel Walter begins by asking a powerful question. Wouldn't life be amazing if we could handle tough times with grace and keep moving forward, even when things don't go as planned? He introduces Zen, an ancient Eastern philosophy, as a way to build the self-discipline needed to reach our goals and find peace. Walter explains that researchers have been studying Zen practitioners for years and have found that practices like meditation can lower stress, improve decision-making, and create a sense of calm. It's not a religion, he clarifies, but a way of life based on the teachings of Buddha. A key idea in Zen is satori, a sudden flash of insight that comes from truly living in the present and recognizing that everything is connected. To understand Zen better, Walter turns to the story of Buddha himself. Buddha noticed that many people were unhappy and believed that much of this unhappiness came from focusing on I and you, instead of seeing how everything is linked. He taught that letting go of wanting things like possessions or status allows us to live a more balanced life and focus on becoming better people. He believed that true happiness doesn't come from external things, but from inner peace. Walter emphasizes the importance of living in the present moment. He explains that worrying about the future or dwelling on the past only causes unnecessary stress. He uses the example of someone who identifies strongly as a high achiever. While striving for success isn't bad, Walter points out that constantly needing to achieve can lead to burnout, fear of failure, and a never-ending chase for something that doesn't bring lasting happiness. This rigid self-image can actually hold us back. According to Walter, Zen helps us build self-discipline in 3 main ways. First, it teaches us to accept that suffering is a part of life, and to prepare for it by working towards our goals. Second, it helps us control our minds, shifting our focus from regrets and worries to appreciating the present. And third, it helps us overcome fear, by realizing that fear is often just a result of negative thinking. By calming our minds, we can think more clearly and make better decisions. Walter clarifies that Zen isn't against achieving goals. Buddha himself offered guidelines for right speech, right view, and right action, all of which are proactive steps towards a meaningful life. He explains that when we live in the present, we focus on the small steps we can take today, rather than feeling overwhelmed by how far we have to go. This makes the journey feel more manageable and keeps us motivated. To illustrate how to cultivate this kind of self-discipline, Walter looks to the Shaolin monks of China. These monks are renowned for their incredible physical and mental strength. He describes the history of the Shaolin monastery, founded by a Buddhist teacher who believed in passing down knowledge directly from master to student. The monks are not only spiritual leaders, but also skilled martial artists, famous for feats like breaking concrete with their heads. Walter details the monks' daily routine, which begins at 5 a.m. and ends at 11 p.m., filled with essential tasks, kung fu training, and Buddhist study. They live a simple life, with few possessions and a strong commitment to their practice. He shares insights from Matthew Ahmet, a British monk who trained at the Shaolin monastery, highlighting 3 key lessons. First, living with basic necessities fosters gratitude. Second, the monks don't believe wealth brings happiness, finding fulfillment in their spiritual and physical progress. And third, they prioritize balance, avoiding burnout by incorporating rest and meditation into their rigorous training. Walter explains that the monks focus on kai, a concept of essential life force, and use meditation and practices like Tai Chi to control their emotions and harness their energy. He notes that meditation isn't just about calming the mind. It's about connecting with your inner self and discovering your purpose. Shaolin monks wake up with enthusiasm because they have a clear sense of what they want to achieve. Walter draws a parallel between the monks' discipline and that of Navy SEALs, emphasizing the willingness to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term goals. He concludes by pointing out that, like productive people in all walks of life, the monks rely on a consistent daily routine. He then prepares the reader for the next chapter, which will focus on how to start a meditation practice. Chapter 11, Meditation for Self-Discipline and Focus. Daniel Walter begins by explaining that many people wrongly believe meditation is about sitting still for hours, humming. He quickly clarifies that it's actually a way of life, not just something you do, and a powerful tool for building self-discipline and focus. Walter emphasizes that the benefits aren't just feeling good. They're about improving your ability to make smart choices, resist temptations, and handle life's challenges with a calm head. Imagine you're trying to study for a big test, but your phone keeps buzzing with notifications. Meditation can help you train your brain to ignore those distractions and stay focused on your work. Walter points to scientific evidence, specifically a study published in the journal PNAS, showing that even just a week of 20-minute daily meditation can reduce anxiety, stress, and tiredness. He asks readers to consider how much more productive they could be if they had more control over their thoughts and energy. Think about a time you felt overwhelmed by a lot of tasks. Meditation can give you the mental clarity to break those tasks down and tackle them one by one, instead of feeling paralyzed by stress. This, Walter explains, is the core of self-discipline, pushing through even when you don't feel motivated. The author then introduces two specific meditation techniques. The first, zazen, or just sitting, involves finding a comfortable position, whether on a chair, the floor, or in a cross-legged pose, and focusing on your breath. Walter stresses the importance of breathing deeply from your stomach, rather than shallowly from your chest, as this provides more oxygen and energy. He uses the analogy of controlling your breathing when you're feeling panicked to show how it can calm you down. It's like when you're nervous before a presentation. Taking slow, deep breaths can help you regain control. The second technique, shikantaza, is described as slightly more challenging. It involves simply observing your thoughts as they arise, without judgment. Walter uses the image of clouds floating across the sky. You can't stop them from appearing, but you can choose not to get carried away by them. This is about recognizing negative thoughts without letting them ruin your day. For example, if you think, "I'm going to fail this project," instead of spiraling into self-doubt, you acknowledge the thought and then gently redirect your focus back to the task at hand. Walter anticipates that readers' minds will wander during meditation, and that's perfectly normal. He cautions against getting frustrated with yourself for losing focus, as that will only create more mental chatter. He emphasizes that meditation is a skill that improves with practice. It's like learning to play a musical instrument. You won't be perfect right away, but with consistent effort, you'll get better. He notes that it takes time to see results, but research suggests you should start feeling calmer and more in control within 7 days of regular practice. For those who find it difficult to sit still, Walter introduces kinhin, a walking meditation. This involves slow, deliberate steps, focusing on the sensation of your feet on the ground and your breath. He explains that maintaining a steady pace requires self-discipline, and that this discipline can translate into other areas of your life. It's like practicing a sport. The discipline you develop in training helps you perform better in the game. Finally, Walter advises starting with just 10 minutes of meditation a day, 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening, and making it a non-negotiable part of your routine. He urges readers to simply do meditation, rather than try to meditate, hinting that the word try can be a self-sabotaging mindset, a topic he promises to explore further in the next chapter. Chapter 12, Why You Should Never Try and Do Anything. Daniel Walter begins by explaining a surprisingly powerful way to boost self-discipline. Stop saying try. It seems small, but Walter argues that the word try actually weakens your commitment and lowers your expectations. Think about it. When you say you'll try to do something, you're already leaving yourself an out. It's like saying you're not fully confident you'll succeed. This idea comes from how we're often encouraged as kids. Teachers and parents say, try your best, which sounds nice, but it can unintentionally teach us that effort is more important than results. Walter points out that life doesn't always give second chances, so we need to approach things with a do attitude. Walter emphasizes that shifting from trying to doing builds self-respect and earns the respect of others. When you declare you will do something, you're showing decisiveness and courage. People see you as someone who takes action, not someone who's afraid to fail. He explains that life often mirrors your own expectations. If you approach a task expecting to merely try, you're more likely to get a mediocre result. But when you commit to doing, you're setting yourself up for success. The difference lies in accountability. Trying is vague, how much effort is trying? While doing is concrete. You either completed the task or you didn't. To become a doer, Walter stresses the importance of self-trust and realism. He uses the example of losing weight. Don't expect dramatic results after just 1 month of effort. Instead, honestly assess your strengths and weaknesses. This self-assessment is a form of self-discipline in itself, as it requires facing your limitations. He cautions against self-pity, urging readers to focus on solutions instead. If you need help, ask for it. If you need new skills, acquire them. The key is to believe in your ability to achieve your goals and to be willing to put in the necessary work. Walter highlights the importance of planning. Before starting a project, clearly define your goals in writing. Vague intentions lead to wasted time and energy. He warns against becoming a start-and-stop person, constantly beginning new ventures without finishing them. This pattern erodes self-esteem. The solution, according to Walter, is to choose goals that align with your abilities. Once you're confident in your capacity to succeed, commit to doing it. He illustrates this with the example of wanting to lose weight. Saying you'll try to work out and diet sets you up for failure because it implies a lack of confidence. Instead, declare you will work out and follow your diet, visualizing yourself achieving your desired outcome. Walter reinforces that successful people don't try, they do. He cites Deepak Chopra as an example, noting that even at 73, Chopra maintains a high level of productivity by embracing this mindset. Beyond eliminating try from your vocabulary, Walter suggests starting with small, achievable goals. Committing to 5 minutes of exercise a day, for instance, builds confidence and demonstrates that self-discipline is attainable. Positive self-talk is also crucial. Regularly remind yourself that you will accomplish your goals. When you have a clear vision of your destination and a solid plan to get there, you're far more likely to succeed. Walter concludes by foreshadowing the next chapter, which will explore the habits that separate winners from losers, emphasizing that your habits ultimately determine your success. Chapter 13, Winner or Loser, Which One Are You? Daniel Walter begins this chapter by asking a big question. Are you working towards becoming the best version of yourself, or are you letting life pass you by? He believes that everyone has the potential to be amazing, but it takes effort. It's not just about having dreams, it's about having the self-control and mental toughness to actually go after them. Walter explains that life is always changing, so you need to change with it. Think of life as a school where you're always learning, even after you finish formal education. Stopping to learn and grow is like hitting pause on your life, and you'll lose momentum. He emphasizes that you always have a choice. You can work towards success, or you can drift towards giving up. No one else can make that decision for you. Walter stresses the importance of knowing exactly what you want. He uses the example of driving without knowing your destination. You'll just drive around in circles. It's the same with goals. Don't just say, I want to get in shape. Instead, say, I want to lose 20 pounds, be able to lift heavier weights, and buy new clothes when I reach my goal. The more specific and exciting your goal is, the more likely you are to achieve it. He points out that humans are motivated by feelings, so connect your goals to something you truly care about. To illustrate this, Walter suggests thinking about why you want to achieve something. If you want to write a book about overcoming depression, it's not just about writing words. It's about helping others who are struggling. That passion will get you out of bed and keep you writing, even when it's hard. He also reminds us that achieving goals often requires sacrifice. If you want to save money, you might need to get a second job or spend less on fun things. Thinking about these sacrifices beforehand can help you decide if the goal is truly worth it. Walter then tackles the difference between doing and trying. He explains that people who just try often hold back because they're already thinking about what they'll do if they fail. True success requires giving something your all. He uses the example of weight loss. Taking a pill or getting surgery might get you results, but it doesn't build your strength or self-discipline. There's no real pride in taking the easy way out. He cautions against trying to do too much too soon. It's tempting to make huge leaps towards your goal, but that energy often fades quickly. Instead, Walter recommends making a plan and taking small, consistent steps. He acknowledges that excitement and motivation are great, but they aren't enough on their own. Keeping a journal to track your progress can help you stay on course and feel proud of how far you've come. Walter emphasizes that repetition is key. Learning a new language, for example, requires practicing vocabulary and grammar every day, even when it's boring. There will be days when you feel frustrated or miss a day, and that's okay. Just get back on track and recommit to your goal. Don't waste time making excuses. Finally, Walter encourages readers to celebrate small wins. If your goal is to run a marathon, don't focus only on the finish line. Celebrate every milestone, like running 2 miles, then 5, then 10. Each win builds your confidence and helps you see yourself as a successful person. He concludes by reminding us that what we focus on is what we attract. With consistent effort and belief in yourself, anything is possible. He sets the stage for the next chapter by hinting at the importance of finding excitement in pursuing your goals. Chapter 14, Fall in Love with the Process. Daniel Walter begins this chapter by explaining that many people start strong with goals, but struggle when the actual work begins. It's easy to get excited about an idea, but much harder to stick with it when it requires effort and stepping outside of what feels comfortable. Walter points out that most people aren't naturally good at this. Unless someone was raised to prioritize hard work, building good habits will be a challenge. He uses examples of famous athletes like the Williams sisters, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Tiger Woods to show that becoming truly excellent takes years of dedicated practice, starting at a young age. The message is clear. Success isn't quick, it requires serious commitment. Walter emphasizes that simply wanting to achieve a goal isn't enough. Relying only on willpower and motivation will likely lead to giving up. Instead, he proposes learning to enjoy the process itself. He introduces the idea of the power of association, drawing from the famous experiments of psychologist Ivan Pavlov with dogs. Pavlov discovered that dogs would start to salivate not just when they received food, but also at the sound of a bell that had been repeatedly paired with mealtime. This shows that we can train our brains to associate even unpleasant tasks with positive feelings. Walter explains that by linking hard work with things we enjoy, we can make the process more appealing. He provides a practical example. Someone dreading writing a business plan could pair the task with a favorite snack or drink. Over time, the brain begins to associate the work with a positive feeling, making it easier to start and continue. He stresses that consistency is key. This isn't a quick fix, but a gradual training of the mind. He suggests playing music while working, or rewarding yourself after each session with something enjoyable, like watching a TV show. These rewards aren't just treats, they're a way to build a strong connection between effort and positive emotions. The author further illustrates this with another example, suggesting someone wanting to exercise more could create a motivating playlist. The music becomes associated with the gym, making the idea of working out more appealing. Eventually, the association becomes so strong that the workout itself feels pleasurable, even without the music. Walter highlights that repetition is crucial. The more we repeat an action, the more automatic it becomes, like brushing our teeth. We stop debating whether to do it and simply do it. Walter also suggests connecting your goals to your identity. Instead of seeing yourself as someone trying to achieve a goal, see yourself as the person you will become after achieving it. For example, if you want to run a marathon, don't think of yourself as someone training for a marathon, but as a healthy, energetic person for whom exercise is a natural part of life. He believes that our thoughts have power, and focusing on the positive future self encourages continued effort. He encourages readers to feel grateful for the opportunity to improve their lives, recognizing that many people don't even have the time or energy to dream of a better future. Finally, Walter suggests using simple rewards like gold stars on a calendar to track progress and provide a visual reminder of achievements. This taps into the positive reinforcement we experienced as children and can be surprisingly effective. He concludes by acknowledging that negative emotions are inevitable, but will discuss how to view them positively in the next chapter. Chapter 15: How to make your negative emotions work for you and not against you. Daniel Walter begins by acknowledging that everyone, even the most optimistic people, will face tough emotions like sadness, anger, and frustration. It's simply part of being human. Many people try to avoid these feelings, but Walter argues that embracing them is actually a key to achieving your goals and becoming more disciplined. He believes that accepting that life will have its challenges is the first step to using those challenges to your benefit. Instead of seeing negative emotions as roadblocks, he encourages readers to view them as signals that something needs to change, like helpful signs pointing you toward a better path. He stresses that ignoring these feelings won't make them disappear. Instead, they need to be addressed with a plan for improvement. Walter then dives into specific emotions and how to turn them into positive energy. He starts with anger, explaining that many people were taught to suppress it as children, fearing it would lead to regrettable actions. Some were even taught to use anger to control others, which he deems unhealthy. However, Walter points out that anger is a powerful emotion that can be channeled constructively. Instead of letting anger consume you, he suggests using the energy it provides to fuel your workouts or push you toward long-term goals. For example, if someone makes fun of your weight, don't dwell on their negativity. Use that anger as motivation to get healthier and prove them wrong. It's not about basing your life on what others say, but about using their words to ignite your drive. Next, Walter tackles envy, noting that people often waste time tearing others down when they feel jealous. He explains that envy signals a desire for something someone else has. Instead of resentment, he suggests using that feeling as a catalyst for action. If you envy a friend's financial success, work harder to improve your own financial situation. If you're envious of someone's weight loss, create a plan to get in shape yourself. The key is to identify what you want and then actively work towards achieving it. Anxiety is another emotion Walter believes can be harnessed. He acknowledges it's an unpleasant feeling, but argues that worrying can actually be helpful. Fear can be paralyzing, but it can also be a powerful motivator. He suggests focusing on the satisfying feeling of overcoming a fear, which can keep you motivated. More importantly, he encourages using anxiety as a springboard for taking action. For instance, if you're worried about losing your job, don't just panic. Use that fear to update your resume, network with contacts, and prepare for potential job loss. By proactively addressing your fears, you lessen their impact and gain a sense of control. Walter provides a practical exercise. Write down your fears and the worst-case scenarios, then brainstorm solutions to mitigate those risks. He emphasizes that fear isn't a sign to turn back, but a signal that you're stepping outside your comfort zone, which is essential for growth. Walter then addresses sadness and despair, acknowledging they are the most difficult emotions to leverage. He uses the example of a messy divorce and loss of friendship to illustrate how these experiences can lead to deep self-reflection. While painful, these losses can clarify your priorities and help you realize the importance of pursuing your dreams. He shares how people often find renewed purpose after experiencing loss, channeling their grief into positive action, like running a marathon for charity. He also points to research suggesting that creative professionals are often more productive when they're in a less positive mood, suggesting that negative energy can be transformed into creative output. Finally, Walter discusses shame, differentiating it from guilt. Guilt is a healthy response to wrongdoing, prompting apologies and correction. Shame, however, is a feeling of being fundamentally flawed. He emphasizes the importance of confiding in trusted individuals or seeking professional help to overcome shame and rebuild self-esteem. He references Brené Brown's work, highlighting the power of self-acceptance and compassion. Walter concludes by reminding readers that setbacks are inevitable, but time isn't wasted if you're actively working towards something productive. He sets the stage for the next chapter, promising to explore principles that will help readers persevere and never give up. Chapter 16, The Pareto Principle and Sturgeon's Law. Daniel Walter begins this chapter by acknowledging a common frustration, putting in a lot of effort without seeing the results you want. He explains that this feeling is normal and understanding. Why it happens is actually the key to becoming more motivated and disciplined. He introduces two ideas, Sturgeon's Law and the Pareto Principle, to help readers shift their perspective. Sturgeon's Law, named after science fiction author Theodore Sturgeon, points out that 90% of everything is, well, not great. Sturgeon originally applied this to science fiction, arguing that even though a lot of it wasn't high quality, the same could be said about everything else. Walter emphasizes that this isn't meant to be discouraging, but rather a realistic observation. Philosopher Daniel Dennett even considers it a valuable tool for thinking critically. It's a reminder that not everything we create will be a masterpiece, and that's okay. The Pareto Principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, builds on this idea. Economist Vilfredo Pareto noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. He then observed the same pattern in his garden. 20% of his pea plants produced 80% of the best peas. This principle suggests that roughly 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. In business, this means 80% of your sales likely come from 20% of your customers. Walter asks a crucial question: if these laws are true, why bother trying at all? He argues that understanding them actually increases self-discipline. Accepting that hard work doesn't guarantee success allows you to focus on working smarter, not just harder. He uses the example of a fiction author who writes several books, only for one to become a hit. Without understanding the Pareto Principle, the author might feel defeated by the failures. But with that understanding, they're encouraged to keep writing, knowing that another success is possible. Walter explains that successful people, like CEOs, aren't afraid to take risks and continue even when things fail. They understand that failure is part of the process, and that a few big wins can outweigh many smaller losses. He points out that a little uncertainty can actually be a good thing. If you knew everything would succeed, life would be pretty boring. The key is to persevere, because your best work might be just around the corner. The chapter then dives into how to handle failure effectively. Walter stresses that every failure is a learning opportunity. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, analyze it to understand why it didn't work. Even if you don't gain a specific insight, the experience itself builds self-discipline. When you discover what does work, build on it and repeat the process. He acknowledges this can be difficult, especially when you're emotionally invested in a project. It's easy to keep pouring time and energy into something that isn't working, driven by passion or pride. Walter contrasts this with the ability to give up gracefully, to recognize when a project isn't viable and move on to something else. This isn't about lacking determination, but about using wisdom to prioritize efforts. It's about sacrificing a dream that isn't working in favor of building on something that shows promise. Finally, Walter emphasizes the importance of focusing on the present. Dwelling on past failures or future possibilities can be unproductive. Self-discipline and determination are essential, but it's also important to avoid burnout. He sets the stage for the next chapter, where he will discuss how to maintain a healthy balance and avoid exhausting yourself in the pursuit of your goals. Chapter 17, How to Avoid Burnout. Daniel Walter explains that building self-discipline and staying focused are important for reaching goals, but pushing yourself too hard can actually be harmful. He calls this harm burnout, and it's more than just feeling tired. It's a state where you feel exhausted, hopeless, and can't even make simple decisions. It can happen to anyone, no matter their job or life situation. Walter emphasizes that burnout isn't a sign of weakness, but a result of too much pressure and not enough self-care. He uses the example of a high achiever who constantly pushes themselves, succeeding in the short term but risking long-term damage. Think of a student who pulls all-nighters before every test. They might get good grades now, but eventually their body and mind will give out. Walter points out that burnout doesn't happen suddenly. There are warning signs. He describes a feeling of brain freeze, when stress makes it hard to think, as a temporary setback, but burnout is when you can't recover from that freeze. The key to avoiding burnout, Walter says, is learning to control your self-discipline, which sounds strange, but it's about knowing your limits. It's about learning to say no to extra tasks that will overwhelm you. He stresses the importance of basic self-care, getting at least 7 hours of sleep, drinking water, and eating healthy foods. He understands that it might feel like a waste of time when you have a lot to do, but he argues that taking care of your body and mind actually improves your ability to work effectively. Imagine trying to run a race with an empty stomach and no sleep. You won't perform well. Walter highlights that relaxation isn't just about having fun, it's about recharging. Even people in demanding professions like the Special Forces or Shaolin monks understand the need for rest. He explains that burnout often comes from how you think about your work, not just the amount of work you have. If you see your job as a burden, it will feel more stressful. But if you can find a way to see the long-term benefits, it can be easier to cope. He also suggests using self-discipline to manage your workload, avoiding distractions and procrastination. Think of it like organizing your backpack. If everything is messy and disorganized, it will be harder to find what you need and you'll feel stressed. Walter emphasizes the power of scheduling. Taking the time to plan a project helps you estimate how long it will take and avoid last-minute rushes. He shares his own experience with using spreadsheets to track tasks and time, which helps him plan his week. He admits that scheduling can be scary because it forces you to face the amount of work involved, but he encourages readers to take action despite their fears. He explains that anxiety actually decreases when you start working on a project, rather than avoiding it. It's like ripping off a bandage. It's unpleasant at first, but it's better than letting the wound fester. Finally, Walter addresses what to do if you're already experiencing burnout. He says the only solution is to take time off to rest and recover, just like you would if you had a physical injury. He encourages readers to be honest with their employers or clients about needing a break. During this time, he suggests reflecting on what led to the burnout and identifying strategies to prevent it in the future. For example, if you took on too much work because a colleague was on vacation, you need to learn to say no next time. Walter concludes by saying that finding the right balance between pushing yourself and protecting your mental health is a skill that takes time and practice. Conclusion. Daniel Walter encourages readers who have finished his book, acknowledging their achievement as they've embarked on improving their discipline through learning these habits. He emphasizes that even small steps like reading a whole book demonstrate progress and show that one's willpower muscle is being exercised. Walter cautions against expecting overnight transformations, comparing it to how Bill Gates developed his discipline over years, not days. Instead, he suggests starting with minor, manageable changes, like practicing a new habit for just 5 minutes daily or waking up a half hour earlier than usual. He underscores that life is a consequence of one's decisions, and to improve it, one must take responsibility for current circumstances. Walter draws on the idea that self-discipline isn't merely an asset used for achieving goals, but rather a core part of one's character. Using famous figures as examples, He illustrates how their success comes from consistent private sacrifices over many years, suggesting that leading oneself is the first leadership role to master before influencing others. He reminds readers that even seemingly unattainable goals were once where every successful person began. It's about persistent daily actions rather than an immediate grand achievement. The author stresses that self-discipline is pivotal to success, no matter one's talent or knowledge. Without it, potential may remain untapped. He warns against the ripple effect of failure. If someone gives up on their dreams, they deny others the inspiration of seeing those dreams realized. Walter shares his personal journey, attributing his growth to motivational figures who persevered despite challenges. In essence, he's passing on the wisdom that came from those who helped him, emphasizing the necessity for each individual to take action and better themselves. He urges readers not to postpone improvement, promising a profound transformation with consistent application of these principles. In summary, Walter's message is one of hope and personal accountability, encouraging readers that while the self-discipline journey might seem daunting at first, every step, no matter how small, matters and brings them closer to their goals. And that brings us to the end of our summary of this book. I hope you found it insightful and valuable. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe for more. Your support helps us bring you more great content. Thanks for watching.